feel a little bit exposed now. Yes, I am one of those mums that keeps every tooth and every lock of hair in the attic. Our attic is actually groaning with the weight of all these little artworks and everything like that. But yeah, I just think it's so precious, just the childhood years. Just before I start, I'd just love to say just thank you to everyone. It's already been said, but every single person who supports the party is valued, is important. We need you, and I know Richard will already be on to the general election tomorrow morning. He'll be starting his strategy for the general election. But I often say to him, as he's kind of pulling to the future and planning and strategizing, remember where we've come from, you know, remember how far we've come. And, you know, we remember the small beginnings, and we remember those who got on board very early on. The Carters are here. I think they might have been our first members, actually. And every single person that joins, every person that gets on board in one way or another, it gives us such a boost. So I just want to say thank you for everyone, to everyone. Before I introduce Margaret and Pauline to come and talk on the in the area of pro-life work, I just wanted to very quickly run through just about every area I could think of pro-life activism, just to give a sort of overview. And it'd be good just to wave, when I cover your area, just to give me a wave. And if people are interested in talking, connecting with people who are involved in a particular area, you'll be able to see who is involved in that area, and you can connect with them in the break or at lunchtime. And there is a pro-life lunch afterwards. I think we've got about 30 coming. I think we could probably stretch the soup a little bit further, so if anybody else wants to join us, that's great. So quickly running through these areas, the first one is politics. I don't need to say any more. We don't need hands up for that, because everybody is involved in some way in politics. So that's really just seeking to change the law from within. Second one, area of pro-life activism, campaigning. So seeking to change the law from the outside, really, through writing, speaking, letter writing, that kind of thing. There are people involved here who are involved in that. Moving on to the third one, education. There are those who have been involved in all areas of education around abortion. Pauline and Margaret are putting their hands up. Anybody else? No, just they'd be great ones to speak to, just educating people about the harms of abortion, and obviously sex education comes into that as well. Prayer. Anybody been involved in the 40 Days for Life or other prayer? Wow. Yeah, wow. Loads of people. Wonderful. So please feel free to connect with each other. Unfortunately, Rose Docherty, who is the doyenne of the 40 Days for Life vigils in Glasgow, she's not here today. She's an amazing lady. I would definitely recommend getting to know her if you get the chance. Crisis pregnancy help. Who's been involved or is involved in that? We've got a few there. The McGrorys did that for a long time. John just put his hand up there. They'd be good ones to talk to about that. We've also got Donna Cameron coming from Stanton Healthcare, which is a new organisation that's been set up in Edinburgh, and they will be offering crisis pregnancy support and all manner of things around that, practical support. They're going to be doing ultrasounds for women who are pregnant and are unsure about whether to have an abortion. That has a big impact on women considering abortion, seeing their unborn baby on a scan. Apologetics. Is anybody involved in that? Pauline does writing, yeah. Anybody else? So yeah, that's just changing people's minds really, you know, explaining, thinking, explaining the reasons why abortion is wrong. Art-based work. Drama. I'm looking at somebody. Patricia. Patricia is involved in the Beaten Heart group, who are doing a play this summer in the festival called Viking Summer, and is a pro-life play. So if you're interested to find out more, please talk to Patricia. Public acts. So you've got the pro-life chain. These are just public demonstrations of our position on the pro-life movement, pro-life cause. You've got the pro-life chain, March for Life, and also 40 Days for Life would be covered by that. John's putting his hand up there. Anybody else? Pauline there. Liam and is it Paul? Yeah, great. And legal battles, so that'd be SPUC, do a lot of that, you know, just fighting some of the sort of more peripheral issues and the sort of central issues around abortion. It takes a lot of money. Pauline, again, is very active. Sorry? And CBR do that as well, yeah, great. So most of these areas are represented here, and although we may express our pro-life activism in different ways, we all believe that abortion is the killing of an innocent human being, and it has to stop. So I'm just going to introduce Margaret and Pauline. I'll introduce them at the same time, but Margaret's going to come up first and then Pauline. It's been a great honour and pleasure to get to know these two ladies. Both of them have given their lives to the pro-life movement. Margaret Cuthill will be speaking first. Margaret joined the pro-life movement after hearing about post-abortion trauma. She has spent many years raising awareness and helping women. She has worked for British victims of abortion and was project coordinator with SPUC's educational research. She set up a helpline, which she is still involved with, and she leads Rachel's Vineyard retreats for those who are in recovery from abortion. And I'll just introduce Pauline as well, and then she can just come up after Margaret. Pauline Peachy has come all the way up from the South Coast to be with us today. She works under the umbrella of CBR UK. They have several ministries educating people about the reality of abortion, speaking in churches and offering post-abortion recovery. Pauline was the founder of PACE, which stands for Post-Abortion Support for Everyone, which takes small groups of men and women through various steps to uncover the harm done by abortion. Please welcome Margaret.
Fixing the microphone.
That's okay, thank you. Well, just to say it's a pleasure and a privilege to share with you today. And what I want to share with you today is the human face of abortion. Because what you tend to hear out there in the marketplace is the word abortion and the death of a child, but there's many victims of abortion. So I'd like to share my experience of abortion, and just to say I am one of statistics that I had looked at. Well, in Scotland, since the enactment of the 67 Act, there's been over 600,000 abortions. Some research that was done a good few years ago, because again, they don't do much research on the after effects, because as far as the abortion providers and promoters, there's no such thing as after effects. But anyway, I'll start. I had my first abortion, which I can hardly believe, 48 years ago in 1974, followed by a second in 1983. I was having an affair with a married colleague, and as most affairs, When I said I was pregnant, the affair ended. I was devastated. I naively had not considered pregnancy a possibility, nor did he. And it came as a huge shock to me when he said, "I don't know how you'll cope, Margaret, but I'll be with my wife." I believed I couldn't cope on my own, and I also believed that I couldn't go back and tell my parents. I only told one friend. The fear, the panic, the isolation, and although I had seen my GP, there was no discussion. All she said to me was, "I'll arrange your first antenatal appointment." This did nothing to remove the fear and of my life being out of my control, and made the reality of the pregnancy frightening. I felt abandoned, isolated, and I had to fix this problem. The baby then became my enemy in my head, but not in my heart. The father agreed to pay for the abortion, and my friend who supported me found out about the British Pregnancy Advisory Service, as was, they are now BPAS, a private abortion clinic in Liverpool. They are now the largest contractors of abortion in England. The initial conversation was by telephone, and I then travelled to Liverpool. There, I had a surgical abortion, and I believed all they told me. I would get my life back to normal, no one would ever know, and I could keep my terrible secret. I put that whole chapter of my life in a box, and a box in my head, and buried it. This enabled me to believe what the counsellor at BPAS told me. You're not in a supported situation. You don't think you can cope. And I only asked one question. I said, "Is it a baby yet?" And that fed into, she answered, "No, only a blob of tissue, and you've got your whole life in front of you, and here's a packet of contraceptive pills. We really don't want to see you back here again." Although my head kept the secret, the reality was, and the reality for the majority of women, but that'll become more understandable as I share. My body couldn't, although my head kept the secret, my body couldn't. And after the abortion, I began having physical symptoms. I became anorexic, went into a downward spiral of destructive relationships, and struggled with emotional numbing and self-hatred. But this was just my life. It was nothing to do with the abortion. What did keep me functioning for the next 9 years was my denial. Not a baby yet. My focus was my job. I lived to work and have a career. And that, I guess, is the denial that many women go to because their brain shuts down to the reality of their baby. And that denial was in place, and I was working hard, and that was until my mum passed away suddenly in 1982. The death of my mum set off another track of abortion damage. The unresolved grief, those emotions, although buried, were still alive. And where I had become, in my eyes, independent, self-sufficient, and did not need anyone in my life, especially a man, her loss triggered long-forgotten emotional feelings that surfaced, and I stepped over a relational boundary I had promised myself I would never break. I vowed I would never date anyone from my work again, but a colleague I saw occasionally asked me out. He lived down south, so I knew little about him, and we eventually went for a meal. And after that meal, he came back for coffee, but the reality was we had sex. I've only ever missed a period in my life when I was pregnant. The first time, and when I was late, I recognized the symptoms and knew this was happening to me again. The shame, fear, and panic seemed far worse than before, because how, at 37, could I have let this happen again? But I knew if I went early enough, it wouldn't be a baby, it would just be a blob. And because that was what I was told by BPAS and what I chose to believe the first time, I went ahead with the abortion. I decided not to tell the father, as we had had a disagreement the morning after sex. And I was sure he would not have been interested in any case. Nothing had changed with BPAS now 9 years later, and they were very reassuring that having a second abortion, well, that's not unusual. I was scared, but went ahead and had the same type of abortion as surgical suction termination. Although I was in the same clinic, I had no memory of being there or what it looked like until the morning after. And instead of feeling relieved, I felt very low with feelings of self-hatred. I had not told the father because we had had that disagreement, but he phoned just before Christmas and was hoping to come up to Glasgow and see me. I explained what had happened and that I became pregnant after that night and had arranged an abortion. Although shocked, he told me I had done the right thing. He was married and had 2 daughters, and my situation would not have changed his life in any way whatsoever. I had recently been made redundant and had begun a 1-year course at university, which involved some travel. The workload was very intense, and I did not realise I had not had a period since the abortion. After the Christmas break, I thought I better go back and see BPAS because they offered a post-operative check. The appointment was made for January of 1984, and I was a bit worried something was very wrong, but I didn't imagine what. The doctor who examined me asked me 2 questions. Have you been to Liverpool and did you have an abortion? My answer to both was yes. He then asked if a colleague could examine me. The second doctor examined me and blurted out, approximately 20 weeks gestation. The first doctor, he said, no, we don't know for sure what's in your womb. It could be a molar pregnancy, but we'll send you for a scan. For me, I was sure I had a cancerous tumour, as what else could it be, and what did I deserve, a woman like me? I never thought about still being pregnant. I was sent to the local maternity hospital, where I was given a scan, and that broke the lie of my denial that my pregnancies were just a blob of tissue. The nurse I saw was very kind and reassuring and told me to watch the screen. And there I saw a baby, 20 weeks, 4 days old, or 4 days gestation, a heart beating, legs and arms moving, and I was in shock. It only came to mind that earlier in the week, I had had a strange feeling in my abdomen, which was my baby moving, but as I had never been pregnant beyond 10 weeks, I believed it was the anorexia returning. Although seeing my baby was a shock, what hit me like a 2-ton truck was the realisation of what I'd done the 9 years before. Those feelings that were buried deeply but were still alive. I could hardly believe and describe my feelings at that time. I was part of my baby's death, and I also tried to abort this baby. I felt dirty, guilty and ashamed. I wanted to scream and run away, but where could I go? I don't know to this day when or if I went back to BPAS office or just made contact by phone. Whatever happened, they did tell me I was within the legal limit to have another abortion, but they had no explanation as to why I was still pregnant. I told them I wanted nothing to do with them. I had just seen my living baby and this child would live. On reaching home, I was not in a good place, as the future seemed so frightening. I knew I would not be having an abortion, but where could I go with the terrible guilt that I was experiencing? I had, in my teens, made a commitment to become a Christian, but had walked away and was what the Bible calls a prodigal. Could God forgive someone like me? I sat for a long time and began to pray, telling God how sorry I was for how I was living and what I had done. In asking for forgiveness, there was no flash of lightning, but God came. As I sat, a tremendous peace settled on me, and I knew I was not on my own, and I also had the surprise that telling my family, those in my world, I was having a baby, would be totally different to what I had feared and what I expected. Everyone was very positive, and all my fears were never a reality. I was accepted, and so was my baby, and the Lord gave me the courage to face the future. The next few months were a whirlwind of change. I finished my course, although I didn't sit the exam till the next year, which I passed. My family, friends, and neighbours were shocked, to say the least, but were more than accepting of my situation. We all looked forward to the baby being born. I had prayed a lot about letting the father know what had happened. To all intents and purposes, the abortion was unsuccessful, but he had never given me his real telephone number, so I left that with God. And God's surprising. The week prior to my due date, I received a call from him. He was coming to Glasgow, and could we meet up? I said yes, because he clearly needed to know the consequences of his lifestyle, and as my life had changed, he needed to look at himself and take responsibility for how he was living. He had to change and stop sleeping around. He came to the house, was shocked at seeing me pregnant, but all I said to him was, as I did not want anything from him, apart from knowing if there was going to be any health issues in his family history, that I should know for the baby's sake. I also asked that if a young adult man or woman contacted him sometime in the future, that he would give them the respect they deserved. He left after 10 minutes and has never been in contact again. My daughter was born the following Tuesday, and life has never been the same since. I've been on another journey of a life restored in many, many ways. No explanation was ever given by BPAS about the abortion not working. But a few years later, after I had become involved in pro-life work, a scientific research paper was published concerning multiple pregnancies and where there were twins, one twin being aborted and the other surviving. I truly believe I did lose a twin, and Pamela, a brother, but that came later after experiencing a healing therapy for the named damage of abortion known as post-abortion trauma, a type of post-traumatic stress disorder. This counselling programme touched on many of the unresolved hidden emotions associated with abnormal grief, shame, anger, self-hatred and unforgiveness, and also gave me answers as to why I saw abortion as the only answer to my pregnancies. Because abortion's never done in isolation, and nor is the abortion the beginning of the story. We all have a past history that influences who we are when a crisis occurs. It was important to put in place the reality of abortion and its impact on women who have their stories to tell, which is completely different from what you hear from the abortion promoters, the providers, government and pro-choice groups. Those groups who have been shouting the loudest, saying the same thing for 54 years. I just wasn't sure exactly the time that I had, so I won't talk about post-abortion trauma in any detail, but just to say to you, my aim today is to put in place the reality of what a woman faces in an unplanned pregnancy or unplanned or crisis pregnancy. Please don't believe what you read or heard from abortion providers. They're really good at what they do, and over 54 years have taken our culture from allowing abortion only in certain hard cases, rape, that's the one they use globally to protect women, to now having an abortion on demand in their own home. The women are silenced because of their denial, guilt and shame. Many in society see the woman as public enemy number one, but they have believed the screaming voices of the women's movement, and it shouts louder today than ever before. I believe we can tell the truth about abortion. It is the deliberate killing of a child. But I would say the women are exploited by the abortion clinics and their lack of good counselling practice, where they only tell some of what a woman needs to hear to allow them to make her choice for her. They both are victims, and tell her the truth about what is being offered and what she can expect in the aftermath. Save the mother and you save the child. If real counselling was available, and that's a battle in itself, allowing her to understand and explore all that she needs to explore. I would say, just in finishing, that abortion is not only the death and, well, the abuse and the death of unborn children, but it is also an abuse of women. And we have the opportunity, I believe, in the Scottish Family Party to tell the story, two halves of one whole. Men are victims, families are victims, and over the years I've counselled so many grandfathers, grandmothers, and when they may not find out till later that an abortion has occurred in their family, and they too suffer the grief and the loss. And well, I'm so proud to be part of the Scottish Family Party. Thank you.